Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. Happy Halloween. It is Halloween 2019. It is the end of the Octoberthon. What?
It rhymes. Halloween 2019.
I mean, that's been true for every year that's ended in teen, which is the last 8 of them, or 7 of them, whatever it is.
Yeah, but I mean, especially this year, though.
Why does 19 rhyme with Halloween any more than 15 or 13?
Alright, I'm not going to explain how rhyming works to you.
What? Shut up! This is Screams After Midnight. We are a horror movie
Treat, mother.
We are a horror movie podcast, and every week we get together, we talk about a horror movie. But as the Octoberthon, we're at the end of the Octoberthon, and that means we've been putting out episodes every single day in October, and this is kind of our finale. This is the end of the road before we go back to our regular schedule in November.
So season finale, season 1 is over. We'll look forward to season 2 starting next week.
I mean, this is more at the end of season 3, but yeah, sure. Sure, season 4 begins next week. So no, this is our big movie at the end of the month, and we like to end with a big movie at the end of October, and this one is also timely because a sequel of sorts is about to hit theaters in the next week or so. So this is The Shining. That is what we're wrapping up with. Stanley Kubrick's big film from 1980, starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. Somehow we made it.
Wait, we weren't supposed to watch the miniseries, the TV miniseries starring Steven Weber. Oh boy, it's got to be an awkward review.
Tim, what have you done? What have you done? Now, so somehow we made it this far without doing The Shining, and I don't know how that happened exactly. Too many crap new films to review, I guess. Didn't have time to fit
exactly
it in. Yeah. So, yeah, we're going to talk about The Shining. We'll start spoiler free. If you're one of the few people who hasn't seen The Shining, and well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of young people who haven't seen The Shining, but if you're a sort of person who finds a horror movie podcast and is listening to us talk about horror movies, you've probably seen The Shining. But just in case, we'll start spoiler free, and we'll give you a warning in the middle before we go into spoilers. So the premise of The Shining is that a man named Jack Torrance and his wife and son go to the Overlook Hotel for to sort of be caretakers for the winter, for the 5-month period where the weather's too extreme outside for anyone to come stay there. So the idea is he goes there, he's there to turn on the heating, make sure that the hotel battles the climate a little bit, and of course the hotel might have some sinister supernatural entities which bring out the worst in them, because there's already been a tragedy years before where one of the caretakers went mad and killed his family with an axe. Also, Danny, the son, might have an ability referred to as The Shining, where he can sense things and maybe communicate with other entities via his mind.
Sure, yeah.
That about sums up the idea here. And obviously everyone is familiar with Here's Johnny, which... as far as I'm concerned, just comes from this. It's not a reference to some TV show. No.
Yeah.
This is purely a Shining thing. I say that because, of course, the thing that it's referencing was never a thing in the UK, as far as I know. So, yeah. And even if it was, I didn't see this movie till I was born, and I was born way after this. So,
yeah. Even when I watched it as a kid, it wasn't really something I was familiar with.
There you go. So even you've been aged out of it. So that's the general idea of The Shining. I mean, I'll ask the question, Tim, but I feel like I'm expecting a pretty straightforward answer here. Do you enjoy Stanley Kubrick's The Shining?
Did you get it?
I was waiting for the payoff to whatever this joke was. This you sitting there staring at me silently for 15 seconds, and that was
I guess
it.
One of us has a shine. Right. So Pete couldn't pick up what I was trying to send to him, but no, I obviously love The Shining. It's fantastic. So I'm a big Stephen King fan, and so it is a little weird because he notoriously hates this movie, which the kind of the big reason he gives is that, like, the book is all about this, admittedly, like a man who's had trouble in the past, but he's trying to atone for it. He's like a good person now, and then he's slowly being driven insane, by this hotel. And his big problem with the movie is that, like, Jack Nicholson is insane from frame one, which, like, I do. I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, all right, is that an exaggeration? But he pretty early on, you do get like the sense that something's not right with him. So I definitely see that complaint, but I feel like they must have had some trouble on set or something, because like that seems like, a lot of his movies, people change stuff around. So it seems weird to kind of get hung up on that one thing, like. Especially when like the movie is still like a masterpiece. So I don't know. I feel like there's something else going on there. But I
will say I think he's insane from frame one's maybe a bit of an exaggeration. He's definitely like, yeah, he's clearly got problems from frame one. But I don't know if insane is necessarily the word I jumped to.
Sure, yeah, but. I mean, and for the record, I also do really like the book as well. They certainly are different, but I don't know. I like when movies and books are different, because otherwise it's boring if, you like the movie and then read the book and it's the same thing. So, I love Stephen King. I love his book version, but I also really like Stanley Kubrick, and I love this version. It's I do think this is a masterpiece. Everything about it is, working like past like, the best of its ability. Like it looks amazing, it sounds amazing, the performances are fantastic, and growing up is just one of those movies that were like, when you're getting into horror movies and you see like a lot of junk and stuff, but then there's like a few that you kind of like almost whisper about, like oh yeah, like that movie's cool, this movie's cool, but like, oh man, like have you seen The Shining yet? And like I remember when I saw it like pretty young, like it did creep me the hell out, because I think it is a genuinely creepy movie, but it's utterly fantastic though. It's everything about it is phenomenal. This is such a good movie. It's really damn good.
Well, I mean, it's Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick's always one of the best directors of all time. Yeah. And
like, I'm not sure if this is true. Maybe you can back this up. But like, I think someone told me before, like Stanley Kubrick, his goal was like to make the best movie in every genre or whatever. Like 2001 was him being like, I'm going to make the best sci-fi movie. And then, The Shining was like, I'm going to make the best horror movie, which I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it does kind of seem like it worked out that way, though.
He's definitely close to the top of the list. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at his filmography, I don't know if that was his intention per se, but like, if you look at like, he's got The Killing, or he's got Lolita, or he's got Paths of Glory. He does kind of cover a lot of genres. He does he does come back to war a couple of times though, because he has Paths of Glory and he has Full Metal Jacket. Different wars, admittedly, and different sort of types of characters in those, but. So yeah, I can kind of see that, and then obviously Eyes Wide Shut is his comedy. So I kid.
A hilarious movie.
It's hilarious. So yeah, Shining's is a masterpiece. It's a film that is so confident in every single like movement of the camera. Like one of the things I was noticing as I was watching it this time, and sort of paying attention to maybe things on a more sort of analytical level, because I'm going to talk about it, is just how much of this movie is the camera following someone. There's so many shots in this movie following someone from behind, and it just gives you this presence of like something's following them. Even it's never a POV shot, but it always just there's just enough of it that it feels like. But it's always these really wide shots. Like it's always wider. Like most movies, when you have someone being followed from behind with a camera, they'll be framed kind of perfectly within the frame. This movie is obsessed with letting you know we had a real big hotel to shoot in, and we're going to make sure you see it all the time, and you're going to see just how big the space is. You're going to feel the the hotel itself does become a bit of a character, and like everyone remembers the carpets, everyone remembers the all the various details that you see over and over again, and it's hard to fault it. Now, what's interesting from my perspective is that this was the first time I'd ever seen the US cut of the movie. I made a point of watching the US cut, and I'll explain. You're like, wait, there's different cuts. What's this you're saying? Well, this is an interesting thing where the movie is about 2 hours and 20 minutes, maybe 2 hours and 22 minutes long.
Yeah.
And that was the version that was released in US theaters in 1980. And the movie received poor reviews, if you can believe that. Do you know what was baffling? How many great movies from the early 80s like had bad reviews when they came out, and then we all look back and go, what the hell were they thinking? Like, what were these idiots doing?
Was it like, were people just not in the mood for horror or something? Because I think it's easy to say, like, a lot of the best horror movies are from the 80s, and then it's weird going back and finding out like they weren't well received. So
strange, but basically it was reviewed poorly. So Stanley Kubrick made the choice to recut the film. He cut out 20 plus minutes for the international release, and it's labeled as the international release. I don't know if it was just Europe or the entire rest of the planet, but the cut that I grew up watching is the shorter version, which is about 2 hours long. And what was interesting is that, most movies these days, when there's different cuts, you buy the Blu-ray or whatever, it'll say, hey, which cut do you want to watch? They'll give you the choice. They'll make it an easy thing. For some reason, The Shining, like Warner Brothers, for whatever reason, have just kind of like stuck to this like kind of like two different cuts thing, where even the Blu-ray that I own, the UK Blu-ray, is the international cut, and if you buy the US Blu-ray of the same period, because there's a new one just coming out because they're doing the 4K version, and I'm not sure which cut comes with that, probably the longer one. I don't know if they're doing different versions or whatever, but I do have to wonder why this is that after all this time, even because the Blu-ray was region free, like you can play it, because Warner Bros are very much about like the disc being playable all over the world. But if you buy the US disc, you get the US cut. If you buy the disc in Europe, you get the European cut.
You can watch Man of Steel no matter what country.
I know. So weird.
Fantastic.
So I actually owned the US DVD of The Shining for a while, but never get around to watching that copy of it. So I had it in my grasp at one point and never did. But interestingly, the US longer cut is sometimes referred to as the director's cut. That is not entirely accurate in the sense that both cuts are the director's cuts, because Stanley Kubrick approved both of them. There's contrasting opinions as to whether or not he claimed which one was his favorite or which one was better. I've seen people claim that he wanted it to be tighter paced, and that's why the European cut's the better one. I've seen people say that no, the US one's better because it has this extra backstory in it. So I was very curious to finally watch the longer cut and see how I felt about it, and see if it did feel a bit too long, or see if it did feel like anything that was added felt rough. As we talk about the plot and the spoilers, I'll try and point out some of the main things that were different. I will say the movie's still great. It doesn't feel that different. The one thing I'll say, there is one scene, there's one like 10-15 second scene that I think is bad, that's never been in the cut that I've watched. Interesting. Okay. So I'll bring that up. I'll just say it's a bit hokey and doesn't feel like it belongs in a Stanley Kubrick movie. But other than that, it's just as great. There's I don't really have a clear favorite between them.
So at any point did it feel like it was dragging or anything? Because I feel like this is sometimes we talk about like movies being too long, and 2 hours and 20 minutes is a pretty long runtime, especially for a horror movie, but I find it endlessly watchable. Like at no point am I ever bored or feel I want less of this.
What makes it such a shame that Stanley Kubrick never really did any other horror movies is that he's so good with the sort of slow suspense that you don't really feel the runtime, I don't think, in the way that you otherwise should. So no, I didn't feel like it was too long, or it was dragging on. So that's good. That's good. But I will say one of the interesting things is that that Stephen King's main complaint that Jack Nicholson's like clearly crazy from frame one is actually less true in the shorter cut, because the entire scene near the start where Danny has a doctor come to see him, and then the doctor sits and talks to Shelley Duvall, talks to Wendy, about like Danny and when they moved here. And this is in the American cut where you hear about how Danny got hurt, how he got injured by Jack Nicholson, in the past when he was drunk. And this is like a 5.5 minutes chunk that's not in the European cut. In the European cut, you don't find out that he hurt Danny once until he's telling it to Lloyd the bartender, which is like over an hour into the movie, maybe even like 60, 70, 70 minutes into the movie, something like that. So, that, and I've heard people, and I was looking up like opinions on this, like, and some people think the US cut's clearly superior because from the start what his backstory is, and therefore it sort of puts you in this frame of mind of this guy's already maybe unhinged. But then the argument for the European cut is that you don't really know that right away, and it's slowly revealed over the course of the movie. So that was kind of a funny difference watching. That was in terms of a character thing, that was the biggest difference that I felt going through it.
Yeah, but interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the other things are a lot of small snippets here or there. Like you've seen. Have you got animal troubles, Tim? You keep looking over.
Yeah, the cat's driving me crazy. Hey, come on. Yeah, he's keeps trying to claw at the little food mat, so it's knocking all the food out. Clean that up later.
Little terror. So yeah, no, I just that was one of the interesting things for me watching it this time, is just watching this different cut that I've never seen before, which has like 20 extra minutes of things. There's definitely parts where it's just like, like they could have cut like all this stuff out that wasn't in the other cut, because it doesn't really add much here or there, or it doesn't like make it any harder to understand, I should say.
Sure.
But yeah, so I mean, what else? I mean, spoiler free. I mean, we talked about the camera always being behind people and like making sure the house is there. Obviously, most of the film's set. Oh, not say the house, the hotel. Most of the film's set in the hotel. It really becomes a character in of itself.
Yeah, and like you're kind of saying to that point, it really adds to the creepiness that you have like this huge giant space that's only filled with like 3 people, and obviously, like, I don't think you usually think of like hotels as necessarily being like that creepy, but given these circumstances and everything, and just the way like the camera's tracking people, it just really adds this like a factor where you can feel the isolation and like kind of like the madness slowly creeping in, and it's just everything is just super effective.
It's definitely a movie where everything feels hyper like released or hyper exaggerated, because like I think everyone remembers the scene where Danny's like riding around in his little tricycle, I think everyone remembers very vividly the sound of him, like because he's on floorboards sometimes, and then he goes into like little rugs, and every time he goes on the rug the sound kind of dampens and it's quite quiet, but then he goes back out of the floorboards and it's like as he's going over the floorboards, and everyone remembers that scene, and all it is him riding around in a circle and his little tricycle, but you just there's a rhythm to the sound of him going depending on what surface he's on as he's riding around, and you hear this over and over again. You're always aware of just how empty and how they're the only ones making noise the entire time.
Yeah, it's like a deceptively simple, but it's one of those things that it's there's just such like it's done so masterfully, and it really sticks out in your mind and can't help but remember it.
Yeah, and like I say, the performances are very good. Jack Nicholson was basically born to play this role, at least this version of it. Obviously Stephen King might disagree, but he's perfect in this. He really is, and he has all these little mannerisms where he like, because this is the thing, every time I watch The Shining, like obviously there's enough there to say that no, there's definitely supernatural stuff happening, and there's definitely especially since Danny has a superpower basically, but like you could take out just a few things in this movie, just a few scenes or a few little moments here or there, and you could leave it be very ambiguous. You could leave it be very ambiguous about if there is anything supernatural actually happening, because you can read so much of what's happening to Jack's character as this is just him going insane, and this is him kind of accepting his violent side, his side, because so much of it's about convincing him to act out, and so much of what the ghosts or whatever you want to call it, like it's all about turning him against his wife and his family. It's all about blaming them for his failures, for his lack of success, for everything that's wrong in his life, and you can read so much of it as that. And because one of the things that I really like is that the first time he like talks to the bartender, like ghost or whatever you want to call it, Lloyd, is it's in the ballroom and it's empty. It's just him at the bar and he's talking to the bartender, and they're talking about stuff. But the next time he comes back, the ballroom's filled with people as if there's a party going on, and this is when he meets the sort of the butler or the waiter dude who turns out to be whoever, and at this point it's almost like the crazier he's getting and the more sort of, or even if you don't read it as an analogy, you just read it as like the hotel's like getting to him, is like there's more and more of it appearing to him because he's becoming more and more a part of it. Like he's becoming more and more entrenched in what this place is. So there's a progression through what he's seeing and what he's experiencing and so on.
Yeah, and I don't think they really like get to it like too much in the movie. It's more something you kind of get from the book too, but like part of it is because like Danny is so powerful, like the ghosts are kind of feeding off of his like ability, and so like the longer he's there, I feel like it kind of helps like the ghost be able to manifest more and do more, and also like one of the reasons why ultimately they want him dead is because then he'll become like a part of the hotel, and then kind of adding to the power that's there, which I don't know, maybe something maybe you can kind of infer that in the movie, but I think that's a little more explicit in the book.
I really like the psychological kind of take on it in the movie, where it feels more like, I don't know, if it feels a bit less explained, and I kind of like that. I think that's one of the things where books with ghosts and stuff tend to get really into the nitty gritty of what like the ghosts want or why they're here or whatever. I kind of like how, and
it's like it's a different medium where like I feel like more backstory does work in a book versus like a movie, like for some reason. But
because I almost look at the Overlook and kind of think of it as kind of like almost a Silent Hill-esque place, right? Where where there's kind of like this weird kind of otherworld quality to it, where because I always like the idea that Jack is taken over by this place because he's already susceptible to be taken over. Like I think if someone who comes here is completely healthy, they can't be convinced by the ghost. There's nothing that can happen. There's nothing they can do. But because Jack does have this dark past, because he has hurt his son in the past, and he does have this resentment towards his wife and son, they feed on that, they manipulate that, and that's why it goes the way it does.
I like that too. I can definitely see that as being a part of it.
So no, I really like that. I think and that's the other thing about the American cut, is that because you know about the past right from the start of the movie, there's so many moments where, like, because another scene that was cut in the European cut is there's a scene where they're watching TV and Jack's sleeping, and he's like, "Oh, hey, can I go get my fire truck?" Because the scene where he goes to the bedroom to get his fire truck, and his dad's sitting there and he talks to him. That's always been in the European cut. But the scene before that in the American cut, where they're watching TV and he's just asking permission to go get his fire truck for his mum, and she's like, no, your dad's asleep, don't. And she's so worried about waking him up and pissing him off that like there's this layer of like, there's already kind of a worry that he might snap at some point. And I guess it's just a preference as to whether or not you like the idea that that's like a risk right from the start, or if you prefer the idea that no, he becomes more dangerous as the movie. I mean, he does become more dangerous. I mean, that happens anyway, but
I think it is kind of funny too, like after those scenes, sometimes he is even creepier, like when he's trying to be nice.
Oh yeah, because he's got that crazy look in his eyes, and he's Because when he's sitting there in the bed and he says, "Hey, come over here, Danny," he's like, "Oh God, what's he going to do? Like, this is bad." So no, like the movie. I like how much it works on just a purely psychological level about a potentially abusive husband. Because I think the movie is largely about how he treats his family and sort of the things that are already there in his life that are already seeded, that he's trying to deny, that he's trying to, because there's a moment when they're being shown around the hotel and they're showing this bar in the ballroom and like, oh, there's no booze because, you know, for insurance reasons it's just easier and cheaper to not have the booze here in the off season. And there's a line from Jack where he just says, "Oh, we don't drink," but there's almost this like, this is where the acting is really great, because obviously some of the crazy stuff's fantastic and really showy, but I love how subtle this line is. You can, because when you're looking for it, you can see that when Jack says this, he says it in a way that sounds kind of spiteful. Like, yeah, like he wishes he could be drinking, but they don't drink because of what happened in the past, and he resents his wife, he resents his son for the life that he has. He blames them for the fact that he's not successful as a writer, that he you know, that they're coming there for this job because he needs the money and because he's going to use this as a chance to write, you know, hopefully a hit. Of course, he writes almost nothing as we see as the movie goes on, but it's one of those little moments in this that I really like. Just it's one of those things, the more you watch it, you notice these little things in the performance. Some subtle, some not so subtle. When he's telling Danny about the cannibals in the car on the way up, and Shelley Duvall's like, "Oh, hey, maybe you shouldn't say this," and he's like, "It's okay, Mom, I saw it on TV," and he's like, "See, it's okay, he saw it on the television," and he has this like sort of tone. He's annoyed that his idiot child is asking him questions. He's sick of him already. And
again too, like, I wonder if some of this stuff, if, you know, one of the reasons why Stephen King also has such a big problem with it is because you know, I imagine it's got to be a very deeply personal story to him, because, you know, he's also had to, you know, he's also a writer. He's also had to battle, you know, with like addiction problems, and who knows, maybe when he was writing this, like maybe, you know, he was putting a lot of himself in the character. So I don't know, maybe that's why he has a problem, but it's it's really funny that like he can't like get past it. Like, I think to this day he still kind of like says like, yeah, it's a bad movie. It's like that's like, come on, man. I know if it's not, it might not be the movie you want, but man, it's hard to deny that it's not a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think from the sounds of it, what he maybe doesn't like about it is that the movie is clearly a movie about a man who is toxic to his wife and child, and that is there from the start. And it's the stories about how this develops and gets. It's really a movie about the toxic mind of someone and how their thought process and how they see the world leads to their, you know, if you look at it from a modern context, it's kind of like, you know, any kind of violence towards women or anything like that, and this idea of blaming someone else for your own misgivings. Like, he's very much that type of character, and it's kind of an exploration of that and how these ghosts kind of encourage that, which is why I say that you could almost take the movie as not actually having any supernatural elements outside of some stuff that definitely is there, but like this idea that these ghosts don't really need to be here. This could just be in his mind. This could just be the justification in his head for what he's going to do, for what he's building up to. Obviously there's some elements that kind of prove that there is some supernatural entities, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, but there's a lot of the movie that could almost play that way, where it is just a metaphor, or it's just an analogy for what's going on in his head, as opposed to, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of like really good movies, there's, you know, tons of different things you can look at and take away from it, and you know, it works on many different levels. I mean, if you even want to get really deep into it, you know, there's a whole documentary about, you know, what some people think the movie means, which I won't really go into it there, but I do think that is I do
have to see Room 237 at some point. I've not had the pleasure, but
it's interesting. It's like, I mean, it's like a lot of conspiracy theories where you watch it and it's like, okay, I don't know if I agree with this, but it is fascinating that, you know, someone was able to, you know, think about it and put all this stuff together.
Yeah. Do you know what I think is interesting about the movie as well is I think that Wendy is a little bit annoying at times. And I have to like wonder like how intentional this is to almost make us in a weird way sympathize with Jack, even though he's clearly going more and more psychotic. You know, there's points where like she's very like and it's like she's always on like, how do I put this? She's always on like tiptoes around Jack, and it comes across as a little frustrating early on where she's constantly doing that sort of like, and then we can do this, okay, voice, where she's trying to be like gentle with him the whole time to try and not piss him off, and it's almost a little bit annoying. And I do think it's actually a really inventive, intentional thing from the script and the direction to almost make us feel like you know, there's a whole scene where she comes in and Jack gets pissed at her for interrupting her, and he goes like obviously way too far and tells her to get the F out and so on and so on. But there is kind of this element of her almost being like that, like almost an annoying child herself, like having to come and get attention and like trying, and she's not actually doing anything wrong, and she's not actually doing anything that should be considered annoying or whatever, but it comes across in a very annoying way. And I think the movie's very intentionally trying to almost put you in Jack's shoes and sort of feel the insanity. And I don't think it's because the movie wants you to side with him. The movie is just making you feel the build, because you feel how annoyed he's getting, and because of that you start to fear for her. You start to fear what his reaction or what he might do next is going to be. And I think that's very intentional, that you can sense kind of everything in the way she's speaking to him and how annoying that is, like almost that way where like he can tell that she is being more careful, and that is actually making him angrier, because that makes it feel like, well, she's scared enough to try and act careful, therefore that offends me because I don't deem myself as being someone who should be scared of, kind of thing.
And it's a reminder of like his past like mess ups and stuff, like, and obviously like Kubrick's very intentional, like, you know, you've heard stories about like, you know, they would do scenes like 60 70 times or whatever, and you know, it is unfortunate because it like I don't know, you know, what exactly the extent is this, but like, yeah, I've heard things about like Shelley Duvall like kind of going crazy on the set, like Kubrick just really like driving her mad, which is a super shitty thing to do to another human, but I mean, I think it does, like, if it does get you great performances on screen, but I mean it's probably not worth it at, you know, someone's like sanity. But I mean,
I will accept it if at the time of hiring her he said, I'm going to drive you nuts on set, so if you sign this contract, know that I'm going to make your life a living hell. If she knew that going in and accepted it, I wouldn't feel so bad about it, but she probably didn't. It was probably just she probably got on set and then he started being a dick.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, and this is just kind of like quick things, like, I've heard like from whatever, I'm sure other podcasts or something, so I don't know again exactly what the extent of this kind of stuff is, but it's I mean, that is a shame, but it you know, again though, it does help like with the like performances of these people that are like being driven mad to, if you are actually driving like the actors mad, it does show on screen.
It's very, it's just like you can sort of see the agitation, you can see the pressure and the stress that this shoot is, you know, you can see it in her eyes. That's real. It's one of those crazy things though, where some of the most hardened like auteurs who are like so terrible to their actors are the ones who get the best results. So it's this weird thing where you look at it and go, yeah, it's a bit inhumane, but you can't deny that there's results there. Like people always say, no, I don't think James Cameron's ever done this to his actors. Like he's never treated his actors like that. But there's a lot of stories about James Cameron being a bit of an asshole on set, because he's just like always wanting to get stuff done. There's a great story about when they were making Aliens, where they were shooting that in England at, I believe, Shepperton Studios, or is it Pinewood? Well, Alien and Aliens, one was shot at Pinewood, one was shot at Shepperton. I can't remember which one was which, but basically, so all your sort of crew who are doing this sort of like lower down jobs are all going to be local people. They're all people who work just sort of at that studio or you know, are local, and James Cameron would get so pissed off because when it was like there was like a sort of designated break time where there'd be like tea and like snacks served, and everyone would just stop working and go and get their tea and snacks because that was time for it. That's what it was. Like this was their time to have a break. And he's like, no, we're in the middle of a goddamn scene. Like, no, we'll finish the scene first. And that was like his attitude. He always wanted to get things done. And that's the whole thing. Obviously, like yes, there's a reason why we have rules about when people should have breaks and things because and this is the thing. I genuinely don't think directors, for the most part anyway, who drive their crew and their cast to like ridiculous working hours and conditions, I don't think is ever done for the most part out of cruelty or because they're awful people. I think it's because a director tends to be so attached to the work that they just want to keep working. And don't take into account of the fact that them wanting to keep working means that everyone else is being kept there for unethical hours and for causing them stress that is beyond. And it's something that I think is a bit more we're more aware of now that people keep track of, and that's why we have like so many unions and stuff in Hollywood definitely. And stuff like that. But
that's definitely like a good thing. But I think the one example that we can get behind though is Sam Raimi loving to torture Bruce Campbell. That's
sure.
Like those stories are always fun when he talks about Evil Dead and how he basically just wants to just dump tons and tons of blood on him and everything.
Not even just Evil Dead. If I don't think these movies have aged well, but I think in Spider-Man 2, I think it is, there's a scene where Tobey Maguire's like kneeling down and there's like people walking past him. It's like at the college campus, and the joke is that he keeps getting hit in the face with like people's bags or whatever, the backpacks. Apparently, like in one of the takes, it's actually Sam Raimi himself, like walking past and like hitting him in the face with his backpack, and that just made me laugh. This idea that I'm going to hit the actor. Yeah, I'm going to do this. This is my turn.
Good times.
That sounds like fun. Yes, but I like the music's really good. Like it has a really distinct sound at the start. This like really harsh horn that plays as the
boom, 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 boom. It's great, and it's like that was one of the best things about that first Doctor Sleep trailer, because it's funny. Obviously, the book and the movie are different. When we get to spoilers, I can get into some of the differences, but the Doctor Sleep, the book, obviously is a sequel to the book, and so it was kind of interesting when they announced the movie and stuff. A lot of people are like, okay, so are they you have this very famous movie, are they going to kind of make it more of a sequel to that version, or are they going to incorporate the book version and ignore that? And I think it seems like they're probably maybe doing a little bit of both, but it still is hard to deny like how effective it was in that first trailer when the music started playing.
I think given how much of a classic The Shining is considered, I feel like you'd have been crazy to think they wouldn't tie it to that movie. You'd be crazy to think they wouldn't. Because although that said though, I think one of the biggest problems with those trailers, which I don't think are that great overall, is that they use some footage from The Shining. There's like footage of like Danny like on the tricycle and stuff, and I'm like, don't use clips from The Shining in your trailer for your new movie, because like you're looking at Kubrick footage and then you're cutting to like this modern footage, and I like Mike Flanagan, I do, but that new footage does not look as good. It just doesn't.
But I actually think though that I could be wrong. Maybe we'll double check this, but I think he actually said that was all footage that they reshot. Like, it's not the actual footage. I think he said the only footage that was directly from the movie was the blood coming out of the elevator.
Oh, interesting.
But I mean, it looks like super close. Maybe if you're really looking at it, you can see the differences. But I mean, it's clearly supposed to be.
Well, what's interesting about that then though is that he can achieve the Kubrick look if he wanted to, and he's not doing it because the rest of the trailer looks a lot, I don't know, worse.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but I mean, we'll see how it. It would make sense too if they are maybe, reshot some stuff to maybe make it fit better, like some what do you call it, like flashback thing, just to kind of fit it in the movie. That would make sense, but I don't know.
What do you call those things where it flashes back? Oh yes, flashbacks.
You knew what I meant.
Oh dear. So no, I think we're a bit done with spoiler free. I think it's probably a bit time to dive into the spoilers. Before we get to spoilers though, I will just remind you about patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support everything we do and keep all the content coming by going over there and supporting us for as little as $1 per month, which will net you an exclusive bonus episode every month. Although for Octoberthon we had 4. We had the entire Wishmaster franchise, but there's a whole back catalogue now. I think Wishmaster 4 brings us up to about 12 exclusive episodes, so you can get access to that library if you go to patreon.com. It only costs $1. Obviously at the higher tiers you get voting rights, you get other things. You can submit movies to the crypt, which is like a sort of a to-do list that we'll go back to every once in a while, and so on and so on. So go over to Patreon, have a look and see if you're interested in supporting everything we do. But yeah, spoilers for The Shining. Movie starts, of course, with a lot of aerial footage of the mountains and Jack going for his interview, and we get some of the backstory. We get sort of the explanation as to why the hotel shuts down in the winter, and we hear about this Grady who about 10 years before this murdered his daughters and wife with an axe, which of course is very specific because that's kind of what Jack ends up trying to do. And
which in the book it ends up being a croquet mallet that Jack uses like when he's kind of on his rampage at the end.
Interesting.
But yeah, I think axe probably works a little bit better, but
yeah, just imagine not having the scene where he looks through the door and says, "Here's Johnny." Like you can't break down the door with a croquet mallet.
Yeah, like you can, like you can definitely hurt people if you're swinging that, really, like if you hit someone upside the head with it, that's definitely painful. But yeah, it doesn't really have the kind of, I guess, I don't know, it doesn't seem as threatening as an axe.
Yeah. And obviously this is where we have all the scenes introducing Wendy and Danny as well back at their apartment, setting up those characters, setting up the idea of Toby is the
Tony, I think.
Is it Tony? Tony's the imaginary friend that is part of Red Ram. And so we set that up. We set up kind of his talking to Tony, and we set up the backstory here. As I mentioned, the doctor's around, and we hear like how he was hurt before. And and what's interesting is that Jack says in the interview that his wife will be delighted to hear about this murder story because she's an avid horror film fan. But I don't get the impression that he ever actually tells her. Like the movie, it never seems like he actually does. I don't get the impression she knows about this.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, and she does. I mean, it seems like a lot of people nowadays are like true crime junkies. But I mean, maybe that wasn't as much of a word for it back then. But she doesn't seem like that type. But I mean, maybe he's even just saying that just to kind of score points in the interview. Like, oh no, see, like we don't mind.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. And I've seen him drive up. I mentioned talking about the cannibals on TV and Jack clearly being kind of annoyed that his son's talking to him and whatnot. And I do kind of like the mood when they get there though, how like bustling it is. There's so many people walking around doing things, and it's like by 5 o'clock you won't even know they're there. And it's kind of added to the fact that they just kind of cut to a month later and there's no one there now. Like it doesn't get you don't see them saying goodbye to the manager or anyone. It just cuts to now it's empty.
Yeah, and I like whenever they do like the really like sudden cuts where it just like be like boom, and then like the name of the day will pop up or whatever.
Yeah. No, it gives it this kind of stark feeling to it. That's one of the things that I like about this a lot, is that it's very stark, and it kind of separates from a lot of other horror movies where most of this isn't in the dark. Most of this is in really brightly lit rooms, and it doesn't matter. It works because, again, it's how imposing and empty the whole place is that's kind of making it kind of creepy. Yeah,
and like I like a nice snowy setting too. Like it doesn't start off snowy, but then of course, as it goes on, like the the idea of like the snow coming and covering everything. It just adds to the isolation and everything. And and that can be like a very creepy setting as well, even though it is like it kind of like the opposite of darkness or something. But it has its own creepy quality to it.
There is a line of dialogue when they're being shown around the hotel where the manager mentions it was built in an ancient native burial ground, and I'm like, I could have done without that line. I don't need such an obvious like, oh, this is why it's kind of haunted or whatever. Like, I don't care. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's not really needed.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's in the European cut, that line. I'm not sure. There was definitely added parts of this when he's talking about I think presidents staying there. He's talking about famous people staying there. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the European cut, but it's like, this is one of these scenes where there's lots of little snippets that weren't in the European cut, and it's hard for me to remember which ones. Like, it definitely felt longer, but it's harder to like pin down exactly which parts were new and which parts weren't for me. But
stuff like that is like so minor you probably would never really tell.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a scene later on actually where she's in the kitchen opening a can of fruit cocktail that's not in the European cut, and I only know this because I definitely would remember her opening this giant tin with this big like sort of tin opener, which, by the way, in the big pantry they've got, because there's a big freezer with all the meat. Because Halloran's very excited to tell him about, there's 4 dozen hamburgers and there's 5 chickens and there's all this. He's like, that's what I mean. They go into the pantry and there's all the boxes of like cookies and whatever. Was this a thing in 1980 that ketchup came in a can? Like, what the hell? There's a giant can of Heinz ketchup and it's like a big tin.
I mean, I think obviously it does seem strange. I think maybe my guess would be is like things are maybe a little different for a hotel when you have to feed that many people. You might buy like more, larger versions of things. But yeah, it definitely does seem weird.
It just felt weird because there was a green Heinz can as well, which I don't even remember what that was, but. It's one of those things.
Maybe
Heinz always says in the front there's 57 varieties, and I'm like, I know 2 of them. Like, I can name you 2 Heinz things. I don't know what all the other varieties were.
I remember it was a thing growing up when like they did different colored ketchup. Like they had like a purple ketchup or something. I don't think I ever tried it.
Yeah, they used to do green for Halloween or something like that. Yeah. Or St. Patrick's Day.
I was so pissed yesterday because I went to after the movies, me and my friends were walking around, and I really wanted to go to Cold Stone Creamery because they were doing a special Halloween ice cream. It's called like Boolicious, and I think it's just like some type of vanilla ice cream or whatever, but it's dyed black to be creepy. And I went there, and they were out of it. I couldn't get it, and I was bummed.
That's weird. That's weird. It's one of these things though. There's so many logos in the background, and it's 1980, so they're sort of different. Although, to give them credit, Oreo cookies have not changed their logo in a long ass time because it looked the exact same.
Yeah. I think this is like a lot of the stuff they go into in room 237, where they're talking about like, oh, what does this mean when they place like this mascot here and this there, and and again, it's like it seems like so. That's such a far-fetched like thing that no one would ever notice, but it is interesting that someone has noticed and puts those things together.
Yeah, it was funny actually. Is I never noticed Oreo cookies in this movie growing up, but they're a big plot point in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and this was back when we didn't have Oreo cookies in the UK. We only got Oreo cookies maybe like 10 years ago. So I remember growing up and just being like fascinated by what's that white cream taste like? What's going on here? But I haven't.
That's another thing. I was going
to say I haven't quite enjoyed Oreo cookies, although I preferred. They don't really do them anymore, but they did Oreo Cakesters at one point, which was like soft versions of Oreo cookies, and they were really nice.
Ooh, that sounds really good. Yeah, I love Oreos, and then it's another thing where, nowadays like everything has to be like bigger and crazier, so like they're constantly coming out with like these like new flavors, which some of them are really good. I actually really like the Red Velvet Oreo and the Cinnabon Oreo are really good.
It's really baffling to me because the whole point of the Oreo for me is the flavor of the cream. If you take that flavor away, then it's not an Oreo cookie anymore, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works with cases like that where I don't think it's like a slight variation of that type of flavor. But I did try the Swedish Fish Oreo when they put that out, and that was disgusting. Like that was like a weird departure that did not work for me.
That is strange.
I love Swedish Fish, but just not that combination.
Right. The important part of this scene, though, is when he's been showing them in this room, is because there's a little hint before this where Holleran calls him Doc, and Wendy's like, "That's weird. How did you know to call him Doc? Like, we call him that sometimes because of Bugs Bunny, but how did you know?" Like, "Oh, you must have said it." And then when they're in the stock room, he just sort of he's talking about stuff, but as he's talking, he just kind of turns and looks at Danny, and we hear him say, "Would you like some ice cream, Danny?" It's actually kind of creepy. It's like he's supposed to be the nice, friendly guy, but like it feels a bit creepy. But he actually tells Danny what the Shining is, and that he has this ability, and he can see things that maybe others can. And he really emphasizes not to go into room 237, which is actually interesting because watching the movie again, it's kind of like he makes such a point of that, and obviously they tease room 237 and the characters do go in there. But if there's anything I expected, maybe more of an explanation of, as to why room 237 is like the most dangerous place in the hotel. You know, why that's the creepy place, why that's the place that you definitely don't go into no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't.
What I can say from the book, they go into the backstory, which there was a woman in there who was kind of like a slightly older woman, and I believe she would go to the hotel like with young men, that sort of thing, and she ends up like slitting her wrists in the bathtub and dying. And then in the book they talk about like how some of the staff, like after she killed herself, I think they said it was like a while before they found the body, and then when they did find her, she was all bloated because she was sitting in like the water for so long, which you can kind of see then later when you see the like ghost or whatever of her, you can kind of get the sense of like why it looks like that then. But so I think I don't think there's anything like specific like exactly special about the room other than, well, someone did kill themselves there, so I guess that's why that room in particular has like a strong presence. And then they mentioned like some of the workers saw her ghost like when they were like cleaning up afterwards and stuff, and so people just try to avoid it.
Yeah, you had the impression that like as time has went on, more and more guests have added to the the ghosts list, if you will, like the amount of like things that are in the hotel,
because there's obviously that, and then obviously Grady and his family that he killed, and then there was like part of the book too is like Jack is going down to the boiler room and he kind of finds these old like files and stuff in these boxes, and he looks through like paper clippings and he finds like all this stuff, like I think there was something about some mafia people in the hotel. Like I forget, maybe if there was a shootout or something, or I think there was like some mafia people that died there too. And then I forget if there was like at some point like maybe like a fire or something that killed some people. But like you said, I think in general, like you don't even need a reason. It could just be this place is evil. Like that could be enough. But then if you have that and then add on top of it these deaths, and like maybe with each death it kind of gets stronger, or at least has more of a ghostly presence or something.
It's not a movie that needs an explanation, is the thing, because it's like
totally
what works in the movie, what sells you on this place is just how it feels the entire time. The direction, the execution of it tells you how dangerous this place is and what it's doing. We don't need explanations for all the ghosts. We don't need explanations for what this place is. Like I said, I think leaving it as ambiguous as possible is actually the best thing for the movie. And we cut ahead a month, and they're here. Jack's acting okay-ish at this point. He's trying to write. He's just wasting the day though, and bouncing balls off the wall. Wendy's taking Danny out to the maze, and there's some great transitions here when he's looking at the maze, and it kind of like transitions to them there. And I actually really like the cut where they go into the maze and it cuts back to him looking at the model of the maze, because there's just this interesting visual of him literally kind of like towering over their world. Like he's kind of like this imposing figure on them, and they're trapped in his world right now. So I mean, there's some nice visual cues there with that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's also kind of funny because you get the sense that he's like resenting them. Like he's kind of like how can they be out there having fun while I have to be in here working? And which, you know, obviously then, you know, later you get the script that he's writing, you know, all work and no play. And it's kind of funny because it's not like anyone is telling him that he can't, you know, have fun. It's like it's all like self-imposed kind of things.
That's the thing. He wants to write with this time, but there's actually no rules saying he has to do anything other than just take care of the hotel while he's here. He's allowed to goof off if he wants.
And it's funny. I mean, I don't know if you can relate to this, but like, you know, for me, like when I'm trying to write like a script or something, like I can totally relate to the idea of being like, all right, I need to write this page today, but I don't know, maybe I should go do those dishes, or like, well, you know, maybe if I go and play like this game for an hour, then I'll like, you know, then I'll get to work or whatever. Like,
yeah, I can feel. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, I've been there. Hell, not even just writing stuff, even doing stuff now for YouTube. Like, I need to edit something. Oh, I'll play a game for a couple hours, then I'll do some editing, and you know.
Or you do like, you know, 10 minutes of work and you're like, all right, now I'll reward myself with 2 hours of a game.
Yes, I could definitely relate to that. Yeah, and obviously, because there's a great moment actually when they're playing out in the snow. Once it starts snowing, he's just sort of standing there staring at them, and the camera's just kind of tracking into him, and it's just kind of doing this. I mean, a good portion of this chunk in the middle does kind of like blur together when you're trying to think about it in your head, because it is so much of it is like kind of going through these steps of like him getting just a little bit crazier, reacting just a little bit more aggressive or violent or whatever. And it, you know, it bubbles up. And I love when Danny like sees things, or he sees the girls, or he sees the blood coming out of the elevator.
Twins. Yeah.
All of that stuff, what really works about it for me is that every time it happens, it kind of coincides with, you know, Jack looking worse or doing something, and it's kind of this warning system almost. And one of the things I love is that later on, when, you know, he goes full kind of like Tony essentially, and he's going red ram, right, and he writes it on the door and all that. That's right before Jack Nicholson comes in with an axe, and I think something that maybe I'd forgotten about or hadn't really realized up until now is that Danny, or Tony perhaps, in control of Danny, writes that, starts shouting red rum, writes it on the door so that she'll see it in the mirror, and he actually brings her a knife, because obviously it's just this creepy moment at first where Danny's got a big butcher knife and he's brought it to his mother, and you know, she wakes up and she takes it off and she's like, oh Danny, what are you doing? And then Jack Nicholson attacks with the axe, and all I could think was, no, this was a warning. He's telling her that, you know, he's coming to do something dangerous, and he's brought her a weapon. Like, this is the thing, when she's in that bathroom and he's coming in with that axe, like, she looks at the sink because she's put down the knife there, and she's got a butcher knife, and it's like, yeah, that would never be here otherwise. She would not have this self-defense item if you know, Danny or Tony or whatever you want to phrase it hadn't brought this. This was purely a tactical thing, as much as it might seem creepy at first because he's going red ram, and like it sounds kind of creepy. He's actually just helping here, and I think the interesting idea of this movie is that, like, Danny having this power is what gives them the edge to survive. It's what gives them the edge to fight back. Because one of the things that I really like is this idea that, again, going back to the whole thing where it doesn't necessarily have to be literal, is this idea that as Jack's getting more and more crazy and Danny starts seeing more and more like these flashes of this red blood coming through the elevator, these flashes of these girls, and he's having these freak out moments, you can almost read that as just, no, this is how devastating the idea of an abusive father who's scary to a child, and what this tension, what this relationship that his father has with him and his mum is doing to him, how you know, how devastating that is to a child living in that kind of toxic family situation, and how it kind of keeps happening. Like, you can kind of just read it as that if you want to, up to a point at least.
Totally.
So I really like that this idea. So, and then even the idea that, you know, like, the reason why Wendy wants to even fight back eventually is because it's Danny that's in danger. She almost wouldn't be willing to do it for just her, but it's because it's him. So, and obviously it all builds up to where he shows up after he goes in, because there's a lot of teasing of him like going past room 237, then there's at one point the doors open and he goes in, and Danny like shows up with like bruises on his neck, And Wendy's like, you did this, Jack. And this is like a really gifable moment. You've seen this gif a lot where Jack's just, he's just sort of sitting with his hands like, huh?
What? What are you talking about?
And what I thought, I actually almost felt like she owed him an apology, because she comes in, because this is when he first goes to the bar, you know, in the ballroom, and talks to Lloyd. This is the first time he straight up just talks to a ghost. And Lloyd's like, no, here's a drink. And again, it's this metaphorical thing where he doesn't literally have booze, but this idea that he is retreating to wanting booze is kind of showing you where he is mentally with his family. But he's like, yeah, no, the booze is on the house, blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, this that. And you know, Jack's like, I love his performance here. I love how he talks to Lloyd, how like he seems so like himself and honest, and how, I mean, yeah, he does come off as crazy, but he's a really friendly crazy when he's talking to Lloyd.
Like it almost feels like he's might have had like one or two drinks already, because like he does feel very loose, and he goes right into having a normal conversation. Like there's never a moment where it starts like, wait, who are you? How'd you get here? You're not supposed to be here. You know, it's just like, this is normal. Like that. Like he's not even questioning it.
Which goes into, again, just reading it as him, like, this is like just him processing his thoughts, where he's like, oh, she's scared of me hitting the boy, but that's ridiculous. I would never do that. Okay, I did hit him once. Like it's like he's thinking through the reasons why she feels this way. But the scene ends with her running in, and she's like, Jack, there's someone else in the house. Danny told me what happened to him. He went into room 237, and this woman was there, and she strangled him. And
I do like how he's able to kind of separate his interactions with the ghost from, like, you know, his with the family, because like you can tell, like, when he's with the family, he never says like, oh, by the way, I talked to this like person here, like, you know, because I like, he would probably knows that sounds crazy, and that they would not react well to it or whatever. So and again, it kind of makes you wonder how much is in his head, like how much does he realize it is real or isn't or whatever. But it's interesting the way he's kind of able to like put up a, you know, straight face and when dealing with his family, and then like almost lets it all go when he's dealing with the spirits.
Well, again, when he's talking to Lloyd, the bartender, he basically blames her. He's like, oh, it's all her. She's like, you know, that's one thing happened, and she's never going to let me forget it, blah blah, it's all her, she's dragging me down, she's the problem for everything. And then when he goes to check room 237, of course, he walks in, and we have this very hypnotic scene of the naked woman getting out of the bathtub, and you know, his look in his face, he is so captivated, he's so like disgustingly like kind of like turned on, and he's looking at her. And again, this adds to the idea that his wife is holding him back, and the idea that he wishes he could have this more exciting thing. It's almost like this scene in and of itself, this scary moment where he goes to kiss this naked woman, and then halfway through realizes she's old and dead and like deteriorating. That's almost like a how he thinks of his life or his marriage, where there was a time when it was you know, it was exciting and it was romantic, and it was like, you know, he was attracted to his wife, and now she's just this burden that's holding him down, and this is how he thinks of her. So this is what this scene kind of represents to him.
And it's also funny too, like it almost seems like the, you know, the ghosts and stuff are basically acting like alcohol for him, because like all the stuff he does with them is stuff that you would do if you were drunk. Like, if
I just to add to that point, he immediately goes back to the bar after this scene with actually maybe he goes to see Wendy first. There's a scene where he goes to see Wendy and says there's nothing there, but he does that first. He tells her there was nothing there, and the scene's going okay, but then he gets angry at her and says that it's her fault, that, you know, the idea, because she's kind of implying that they should leave because it's getting too scary, and he's like, no, you're going to mess this up for me, this is my chance to, you know, write my thing, and blah 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 blah. And he's like, this is all your fault, you've ruined my entire life up until this point, you're not going to ruin this now. And he gets really angry, right? After he's had this fight with his wife, he immediately goes back to the bar, but this time the room is full of people as a party, and you know, Lloyd's there to serve him, and he runs into Grady, the you know, who was the caretaker, but he's a waiter, Like, but again, just to tack onto that point, is like, no, he retreats to this place like he's retreating to the ball.
Yeah.
You know, like he has this fight with with the wife, and he retreats to the ball. And of course, see, this was a one-sided fight. This was just him losing his shit. Like, she didn't say or do anything in this scene that was remotely, you know, angry and just saying this is purely him flying off the handle. But he, again, it's this idea that this is how he views his wife, it's how he views his son, and he sees them as these burdens, and he's retreating to his wife. It is purely just a story of a toxic man. You know, your typical
that's even like
trash bag.
That's even like one of the first things he says to Lloyd is he says white man's burden. Like, yeah, which I don't even know exactly what that means, but it's yeah, you can tell that he feels like he's being put upon.
Yeah, I mean, there's like one sort of big, like, sort of racist moment that comes up here, actually, where, you know, he's all in a good mood.
Right, yeah.
Grady, like, spills stuff on him and takes him to the bathroom to have a talk with him and wipe his jacket. And Grady, like, because Jack recognizes the name, and Grady's like, no, I was never the caretaker here. But then he eventually does kind of admit that, you know, his daughters were causing problems and he couldn't do what he was supposed to do, so he took care of them, and his wife got in the way, so he took care of them. But so it kind of gets to that creepy point where the ghosts are starting to float the idea to him that you might have to take care of the family. But he does say, do you know your son's trying to bring an outside party? Because obviously we've seen Danny, like, lying there and he's, like, shining, and it's like he's actually trying to reach out to Halloran with his power, which does work, because Halloran wakes up and he, like, senses something's wrong, and that leads to him sort of coming. But I like, you know, he says, you know, he's sending help, and he's like, what kind of help? And, you know, he drops the N-bomb, and there's not like a big thing here in the movie where this is sort of brought up, but again, it kind of ties in. Because if you think of the sort of you know, for incel of, like, the present day, and the type of, like, idiot, like, people who are, like, you know, dropping that word on stream, you know, and what we think of as that type of person, like, Jack is kind of the middle-aged baby boomer kind of version of that, right? You know, he's not obviously like a nerd like we think of some of those people, but
sure,
he's kind of that generation's, like, version of that. He's this, so even though there's not a lot of racial stuff that's brought up, the idea that he is also actually racist, you know, without really seeing much of it, it actually kind of fits his character. It kind of makes sense. Him saying, "Oh, white man's burden," it kind of feels like, yeah, everyone else is the problem. Yeah, it's not you. Everyone else. It's your wife's fault. It's a black man's fault. It's your son's fault. It's everyone's fault but yours. That's who he is.
I mean, knowing how dumb, like, some people are nowadays, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people that think he's, like, the good guy of the story.
But so no, so you have this scene with Grady, and it's very creepy. It's kind of getting us to the point where he's going to try something, and it leads to a scene where Jack does kind of, like, get, because Wendy's, like, sort of convinced herself they're going to leave. They're going to take the snowmobile and they're going to get to town. And she's going to go talk to Jack, and she brings a baseball bat with her. At this point, she's that nervous. She's bringing a baseball bat, and she goes to see him in the writing room, and he gets very angry. He gets very upset, accusatory, and he starts to, like, get, you know, come towards her, and it very, very much becomes like her sort of, like, saying stay back, and she sort of, like, waving the bat back and forth, and he's like, stop waving the bat. Yeah. And when they go up the stairs, and she eventually does have to hit him, like, he's coming close to her, and she hits him. He goes down the stairs, and she drags his knocked out body to the freezer because she can lock him in there. And so we get this great scene where he wakes up and he's, like, on the other side of the door. He's like, you know, just let me out and we'll forget it all happened. You know, it's like, when did my head really hurt? Like, he's doing all the play acting stuff. And of course, it's this weird thing where the ghost kind of lets him out in a weird way.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of read that however you want, but it's like, hey, we're starting to doubt your commitment to this, Mr. Torrance. We're doubting that you're actually willing to do what's necessary. And he's like, no, let me, you know, I'll do it. I'll take care of my wife and kid. So, you know, the hotel very much wants some, it's almost like the hotel feeds on, like damaged people. Like, that's almost what it feels like.
Also, another thing they mentioned in the book, which I I don't know specifically if they talk about how he's unemployed, but that was like another thing in the book too that adds to it, where in the book he's a teacher, and then he's kind of working at like this kind of rich kid like private school, and he ends up getting fired because he I forget if there was like a troublesome student, and like he gave him a bad grade, and then he slashed his tires, and then I think he catches him in the act, and I don't know if he actually hits him, or or if it's another thing where maybe he grabs him and almost hits him or whatever, but he gets fired for that. So like that's one of the reasons too why the job is so important to him. And then you can, and it's kind of funny the way like the ghosts are acting, like they are acting like employers. And sometimes when you are very desperate for a job, especially when you have like a family to feed and everything, like you'll do whatever you need to like keep your job. So
you said that as if you're speaking from experience, like you had a family to feed before.
Well, I mean, I got cats that need cat food, so it's important to
that's close enough. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but no, like you know what I mean. It's like that's like another reason why he's just like, no, like I need this job, because like when you are desperate and you don't want to get fired, you'll be like, and you'll see the tricks these bosses do where they're like, you're not doing as good a job as I was hoping. No, I'll do good.
There's that, yeah. I mean, that goes back into like everything that's going on, kind of relating to his life. We've been talking a lot about his alcoholism and him getting angry with a kid, but yeah, the movie does make several references to him. Because when he yells at Wendy in the room before he goes back to the bar, he says to her, well, you want me to go back and maybe get a job shoveling driveways or working at a car wash? Like that's kind of like where he sees that as demeaning. And the movie never actually says why he stopped teaching, because it mentions he used to be a teacher, but it never actually says why or what the purpose was. So it's interesting to hear that from the thing. And it's one of those things where maybe it's not super important why, but you do get the idea that his career was derailed because of something. And a part of the reason why I think the ghosts are treating it like an employment thing is because he has this pride that's been shattered because of his career ending. And I think one of the key lines there that kind of gets to that is I think it's Grady talking to him when he's talking about how his wife was getting in the way. He talks about how he'd signed the contract and he had this duty. Either he says that or maybe Jack says that to Wendy before she hits him with the bat. It's either one of those two scenes where he's talking about you've got a duty and you're trying to have to uphold that duty. I think it's Jack. I think it's Jack that says to Wendy, because he's talking about how I've signed my name. I have these responsibilities and my word is only as good as my sign. And he's really making this speech about the responsibility he has to hold up to this. And maybe it is. Yeah, he. Again, it all goes back to these normal things. He's losing his job, he's an alcoholic, he's hit his kid, like it's just all these normal toxic behavior things. And he's this wreck, he's this tragedy of a character who feels worse as time goes on because he just wallows in his own misery instead of like trying to improve himself.
Yeah. And just for clarification, you don't think it's normal to hit kids. You're just saying it's not a supernatural thing.
Yes. Well, what did I phrase that would make you think I thought it was okay?
Well, you said because we're all talking about normal things like toxicity.
Normal in the sense that it's a thing that happens, not in a. Right. It should be normal, but yes, it's not supernatural. It's a everyday tragedy that happens in real life.
Right.
In the same way that saying, I don't know, like a hurricane is normal. It's not a good thing, but it happens.
Right. Just making sure.
Yes. I mean, kids are the worst, and more movies should be willing to kill kids, but that's neither here nor there. So what was the point I was about? Yeah. So I like that. I like that kind of hint. Again, it's all about his personal life and his pride, and the ghosts seem to be treating it like you say as an employment thing, where it's like, oh, you're not doing your job, Mr. Torrance, you need to step up. So this is of course when Danny gives the old red rum warning, and he comes in with the axe. They're in the bathroom again. Danny brought her a knife. This was like he knew this was coming. He was making sure she had a weapon to defend herself. It's a really neat little beat. Of course, Danny gets out the window. She does not. She slices him, and then we end up getting a lot of chasing around the hotel. with her running around. This is where the one scene that's not in the European cut that I just flat out wish still wasn't there. She runs into like I think it's the ballroom, but there's like skeletons sitting there.
Oh yeah.
It's just really hokey. I'm like, this feels out of place in the between compared to the rest of the movie. But there's also the one weird moment that was in the European cut where she sees like a guy in like a bear costume giving a blowjob to another guy.
I think it's been described, or at least in the book, I think it's described as a dog costume, but it looks more like a bear. In the movie, at least, I think.
Yeah. No, it does. It does, yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of funny because like it is like a weird, creepy moment, and like especially as a kid when you don't really know what's going on, it's like creepy. But I mean, as an adult now, it's just like, all right. I mean, yeah, it's just two what I'm assuming is consenting people, engaging in a fairly normal act, but I guess it's a little creepy because one's in like this weird costume. But
yeah, you say like, normal act. I think the dog costume makes it a regular.
Well, I mean,
act.
I don't want to. If that's your thing, though, I don't want to. Shame anyone's kink or whatever. But
you're kink shaming. I can see it in your face. You're kink shaming. It's written all over you.
Well, you're the one that said it wasn't normal. I'm saying it's fine. But
I didn't say it was bad. Saying something is not normal does not mean it's bad. I just, how many couples do you think are one of them's dressing up as a dog?
I mean, I don't know, and it's their prerogative. So if that's what they want to do,
yeah.
But I did draw this for the Inktober day that was for ghosts. I drew this scene, so you can check that out on my Instagram if you like.
Yeah, so I think Tim's closet is just full of various goat outfits for his kinky times. Got a goat fetish.
You never mix work with pleasure. That's.
I'll be honest. Being you, I don't know which part of which part is work and which part is pleasure.
Well, just who knows? But that's not to mix them.
Yeah, you really like goats, so I mean, I don't know. That may be the pleasurable side.
I mean, just because you really like something, it doesn't mean you're sexually attracted to it.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, I mean, just because you really like Buffy, it doesn't mean you think she's attractive.
That's a weird example, but sure. Sure, yes. The hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer Tim just referenced.
Of course.
But I mean, I really like donuts, and I can't deny that every so often I look at that hole in the middle of the donut and think, yeah, I could stick it in there. I kid.
Okay,
I'm doing comedy.
Yeah, but a little bit of a truth.
Well, don't even get me started on tacos. Anyway, or hot dog buns.
Oh man, you must have really liked what was it called, Sausage Party or whatever that movie is.
I never saw Sausage Party. So something that's good enough for me to crack a joke that lasts 5 seconds on a podcast is not equal a full feature-length movie.
As I wish they would have known that before they made that movie. Because I did watch it. It was very bad.
That's a shame. That's a crying shame. I'm so shocked. But yeah, so there's a lot of round around. Obviously, we've not really mentioned Halloran's kind of on his way because he tried to communicate. The movie set up earlier on like a radio. Wendy talks to the police officer who's at the nearest station. But, Jack destroys that. He destroys the snowmobile. Halloran's on his way. There's definitely more scenes in this cut of the of Halloran on his way because in the European cut, I don't think you see him called twice. I think you just see him called once. And it just cuts to him on the plane, and I think you just see him on the plane and that's it. You just see him sitting there, whereas in this cut there's like a whole thing where someone comes up and asks him if he wants anything and like whatever, and then you see him in the airport talking to a guy. Like it explains how he gets a snowmobile. It explains because he has to explain to the guy, oh yeah, this caretaker may be an asshole, I have to go up and see if they're doing okay. Like all that's not in the European cut. It just you see him on the plane, and then later on you see him in the snowmobile driving towards the hotel. There's no like over explanation as to how he gets this or like what his journey's like. It's just no, he's on his way. Here he is getting close to the hotel. He gets in and he gets axed to death, and is the only kill in the movie. Funnily enough, he's the only one who gets killed in the whole movie.
And so that's one big difference between that and the book is he does survive in the book, and then he is not like a huge character in Doctor Sleep, but I think he has like a pretty, like, biggish moment in the beginning of the book. So I'm interested to see if they'll retcon that a little bit or something for Doctor Sleep, or
I don't think so.
Address it.
I feel they'll just have another character stand in, maybe. Like they'll just have another old dude. Because he'll be old. I assume he was meant to be really old in the book because it's like Danny's grown up, so this guy must be.
Well, with Doctor Sleep, like it starts off as it's like a flashback scene, so it's like still when he's a kid. So it's like a couple of what do you call it? Like, I don't know, maybe a couple of years or a couple of months like after the whole incident and everything. And it's, I mean, spoiler alert if you don't want to know a little bit about the beginning of Doctor Sleep, but it's basically about him still having visions of like the ghosts and stuff, and from the outlook, and basically like Dick helps him.
The outlook,
or the what do you call the hotel?
The Overlook.
Overlook, sorry.
The outlook is bleak.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, I was like, oh wait, did I mean the Stanley Hotel? But that's the name of the real hotel that it's based on. So, but
the Stanley Kubrick Hotel. They should rename it. I think Kubrick.
Actually, yeah, that would be cool. But sorry. So anyway, though, but basically, like, yeah, he helps him, like, kind of gives him this way of like keeping the ghosts at bay. So it's yeah. So again, maybe they won't address it at all, or yeah, they'll have a stand-in, or who knows. But I mean, I'm interested to see whatever they end up doing with that.
No, could be interesting. Yeah, at this point in the movie, of course, Danny's like running around and he's hiding in the kitchen, and he eventually runs out into the maze and ultimately outsmarts his dad by retracing his steps in the snow prints, or the footprints in the snow, so that he doesn't know how to follow him, because that's how he's following him the entire time. But this is the thing, if you go back to the scene earlier on where I said, Jack towering over the maze, the model, and that kind of represents that he's like this large entity shadowing over their lives, and he's kind of imposing on their lives. If you take the maze as kind of his world, he kind of gets lost in his own world and can't escape. He loses himself in his own madness, whereas Danny is able to get out and survives, as is Wendy, who ride off into the snow-filled night in their snowmobile to escape. But of course, a lot of creepy things on the way. I think, like, it's such a stark movie where everything feels like it really just, like, the camera will just hang back and it'll kind of observe everything around the actors. Like, it's probably like some of the widest framing, like, consistently in a movie I've seen, because it's so obsessed with, like, no, look at how much empty space, because Kubrick always wants you to know how empty this building is. So it's like, no, here's how alone they are, how isolated, kind of thing.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll mention about, just in case anyone's interested, again, about differences between the book and everything, and probably another reason why Stephen King doesn't like it. So spoilers for the end of the book, but so like Jack really doesn't get any redemption here, but like the way the book ends is he actually ends up being a little bit of a hero, because he kind of like regains his sanity at the last moment, and there's this ongoing thing with the book that he has to like relieve the pressure of like the boiler, otherwise, because it's like such an old setup that it could like explode and basically like bring the whole hotel down. So the end of it is like they're trying to escape, and then Jack remembers that he has to relieve the pressure, and then like he kind of has a talk with like Danny and stuff, and then regains his like sanity, and at the last second decides not to relieve it and lets like the whole thing explode. So yeah, he has like a little bit of redemption, and it takes like the whole hotel down with him.
Again, if Stephen King felt like he was writing like a extreme version of himself, then he's probably mad that the redemptive part wasn't in the movie. Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, so now he just dies an asshole in the movie.
I mean, I think the character in the movie is definitely a tragedy. He's this like this character who goes down this path that so many have in real life, and that's kind of what the movie's doing. It turns it up to 11, but it's telling the story of a very kind of unfortunately common occurrence, this type of person, and it's a very bleak outlook, although the other characters of course survive him, and there's kind of the uplifting part in there. But yeah, so even the simple visual of the blood filling the hallway, like coming out of the elevator, is this idea of this infection, that he's this toxic part of their lives that's going to just paint it red essentially. Yeah, the movie has layers. Even as something as simple as all the carpets kind of looking maze-like themselves. Yeah, the hotel itself being something of a maze. Everyone's kind of trapped in there. There's a lot of red. How many bathrooms do you go into where the walls are red?
Yeah, there's really I'm not sure if a lot of this was part of the hotel already, or if they were making distinctive choices, but everything about it is kind of intoxicating for the eyes. The carpet, and I think when they go into the 237, it's there was the walls are very green, and the toilet is even green, which is very strange, but it makes it very hypnotic and weird to look at.
It's interesting because obviously some directors will use different color lights to achieve a color palette. This is a case of it's always very brightly lit and just very sort of stark and white, but there's so much red in so much of the hotel, or there's green in that room. It gives it these different moods without, and then you go outside, of course, and everything's just dark and white by the end because it's snow and whatever. Yeah. But I don't know if the green of the room 237 represents him going further into his own maze, because the maze is green because it's obviously a hedge mage. I don't know. Or maybe I'm reading too much into that at that point.
It's interesting.
But yeah, and even just going to when Wendy finds the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Oh right. Yeah.
That again ties into this idea we're talking about, how he feels about being worthless as a worker because he lost his job, because he can't make this work, because he can't do what he wants to do. It's a movie about a man who just can't accept and sort of make amends for who he is, and blames everyone else for his problems. That's really that's what it's about. And the ghosts and the idea of I guess in a weird way, the hotel, the ghosts kind of just represent the temptation to take the easy explanation to make yourself feel better. I guess that's ultimately what they kind of are for him in a weird way.
And it's funny if you contrast it with a lot of the movies today and a lot of the things that we complain about. You kind of wish more filmmakers would take the lessons from this movie, which I think it is. Watching it today, I think it is still genuinely creepy, and it's not because the ghosts aren't jumping out at you. There's no scenes where a big over the top ghost jumps and then there's a big boom, music cue. It's just the simpleness of the fact that these ghosts are there, and just these little twins saying come play with us, or just a woman slowly getting out of the bathtub and everything. It's
no, the scenes
that stuff is
the scenes are very creepy. In fact, the woman getting out of the bathtub, if anything, if I was going to compare that tone, that mood of that scene to anything from recent years, I would compare it to Under the Skin. The music was playing as she steps out the bathtub. It makes me think of Under the Skin when she's at the start naked, and she's going to go and seduce all these men, and it has that kind of feel to it. It's really good. And obviously the one thing we've not really spoken about yet is the fact that at the end we go into the hotel and we see the picture of the 1921 July 4th party, and we see Jack Nicholson there with some of the other characters that we've seen as ghosts, and this idea that he's been added to the collection. And I love that this is never explained. It's just, look, here's a weird thing.
Yeah, it feels the hotel puts you to work. If you become part of it, it's you're you're now forever whatever you're doing. But it kind of makes you think though, oh yeah, at some point there'll be someone else, and Jack might be appearing as a ghost there, the same way Grady did. Yeah,
he just joins a long list of people who are all problematic in some way, who have all had demons and kind of fell to them, which is why I think the movie's just a simple tragedy in a lot of ways. But no, it is really creepy, and it's effective because it doesn't do jump scares, it doesn't do any of those things. It's more about, again, I always say some of the best horror movies are when the movie's really about something really normal and human. And this is a case where it's about this man and how he can't deal with his life. We talk about other horror movies and how, I don't know, take your pick of a great horror movie, but the better ones tend to have some sort of simple story that it's really about, that's underneath the supernatural stuff or underneath the serial killer stuff or whatever it is. That's what it is. So no, Shining is fantastic. What a surprise. Stanley Kubrick made a good movie. I'm shocked. Absolutely shocked. I guess we're going to rate it, Timmy, but I mean...
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't even really have to think about it that much. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, I feel like we haven't given like a ton of perfect scores on this, but yeah, I mean, this is a perfect movie to be. I can't think of anything I don't like about it. I think it's endlessly rewatchable from start to finish, and even though it's long, it doesn't feel it, and just everything about it is just working to like maximum efficiency. It's just utterly brilliant.
Yeah, I'm just looking at photos on IMDb of them on set. Everyone looks so happy. Everyone's posing happy for the photos. Yeah, Stanley Kubrick looks too cheery. I feel like he's much more harsh than that on set. I have to just simply agree with the 10 as a goddamn masterpiece. I won't spoil what number it appeared at because you may not have watched it yet, but very recently our voted for top 50 horror movies where you guys all voted, The Shining appeared very highly on that list. So people typically agree that this is a masterwork of execution, because ultimately that's what makes this movie work. It's the execution of the filmmaking, how it's presented, how it treats the scenes, how it's written. The actual core idea, a bunch of ghosts in a hotel make someone go mad. There's 100, if not 1,000 movies that have essentially got that premise and they all suck.
Yeah.
This movie is all about the execution, and when you have Stanley Kubrick behind the camera, that execution tends to be pretty flawless because the guy knows what he's doing, or didn't know what he's doing. So, there you go. The Shining. So yeah, that is the final episode of the Octoberthon 2019. That is happy Halloween, of course, because it's Halloween. If you're watching it, the day goes up. But yeah, thank you very much. You can, of course, rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. That helps people find us because they recommend us out a little bit more if you do that. You can also support us, as we said earlier, at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV to get some bonuses. You can follow us on Twitter at Screams Midnight, and you can, of course, like, subscribe, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments. Ding the bell on YouTube, make sure you get the notifications, but otherwise that is us. So it has been a long Octoberthon. It has been a packed Octoberthon, and all we can say is next year, baby. Next year. But yeah, so that has been The Shining. What classics will we hit next year? You'll just have to wait and find out. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.